So you're going to explain a bit of this. I mean, firstly, there's not many people in the world who can lean on Conor McGregor, is there? Would you think?
Well, probably not.
No.
No, there's
Seems
not.
to be a very single-minded kind of an individual, and he'll do what he wants to do. And if you're the head of an international drugs cartel, however, you might have a little bit of leaning power.
Yeah, I mean, this again comes from this lawsuit that's been launched in the US by Billy Keane, who was a former executive with Top Rank Boxing, and he's suing his former employers, in particular Bob Arum's son-in-law, a guy called Todd DeBuff.
Which sounds actually like, I mean, if you say it properly, DeBuff.
DeBuff, is it?
It sounds a little bit like a cut of meat. Isn't it?
It
Todd
is.
DeBuff. I'll take the Todd DeBuff. Medium rare, please.
Look, it must be great to be a journalist in the US, right?
Yeah, I know.
Because
it's just
he files this case, Billy Keane, and once he files it, it's up on the internet.
Yeah.
A big long document, signed, sealed, all of the details in it.
And available for all to see.
Available for all to see. So it just doesn't happen like that in Ireland. So it's a 30 or 40 page document. We spoke about this and it was in all the papers, some details of it. Eventually I sat down and read through it all. And they have like notes, appendices effectively, just little sections. And in one of the little sections, I mean, it's actually, when you read it, you just see like there's such a murky, grubby little dispute anyway, and how Todd DeBuff and Kinahan, and Daniel Kinahan, like and DeBuff is trying to screw over Bob Arum.
Yeah, his father-in-law.
His father-in-law. He's gone around telling people Bob Arum is senile and he doesn't have a clue what's happening. Then when Daniel Kinahan finally gets to meet Bob Arum, he screws over Todd DeBuff. He says he's a chancer. People hate him in the world of boxing.
Right.
And then Todd DeBuff is telling Billy, don't tell ESPN about because of Kinahan's.
ESPN would be the network that show the and sign the big deals.
So everybody is
screwing everyone over.
Backstabbing. Yeah, everybody's backstabbing everybody. But as part of that, in these notes, and I went and, I just see it there, caught it there, and there's a great little anecdote. Because Todd DeBuff, according to now Billy Keane, is obviously giving his version, but he sounds like a loudmouth who, just one of those guys you wouldn't want to be stuck in a lift with. But one of the things he says was, and he's making the point that Todd DeBuff and Kinahan had a previous relationship, and they've known each other over the years.
When?
Well, I mean, this is back in 2017.
Yeah. And they've known each other before that?
They've known each other before that, at least. So 2016. So they may have had some contact, even though the Buff has totally tried to play that down.
Right. Kinahan, of course, has been involved in boxing prior to 2017. He's in the background, in the shadows of boxing at that point. But
he wasn't in the big time, I suppose.
No, he wasn't. But the MGM, Matthew Macklin's gym, Marbella, opened in 2013 as a kind of almost a private hobby-like gym. By 2014, it sort of started to expand incredibly. And
I mean, they started to basically sign up
people.
The best of Irish boxers first.
But that was 2014.
And then
2015 they start touring, but they're still small. They're Irish English stuff. I mean,
Irish English, but they start.
What's he doing with?
Well, they start getting a couple of big names. So your own pal Billy Joe Saunders would be one of them, and Michael Conlon and Paddy Barnes after the Olympics will be big names in Ireland. And then, of course, they hit the big time with Tyson Fury. So they start getting in these bigger boxers, and eventually they go stratospheric in no time. But so Billy Keane is making this claim that they have this previous relationship, and he talks about the Buff. Basically, he says he goes around bragging about how he got Daniel Kinahan to lean on Conor McGregor.
Right.
So I'll read you out what it says. The lawsuit says, Kinahan was no stranger to the buff. In 2016, Top Rank signed former Irish Olympic boxer Michael Conlon to a multi-year deal. At the time, Conlan was managed by MTK Global, a boxing and MMA management and events promotion
company. That's how they know each other.
Founded by Kinahan.
Yes.
But of course, was he not meant to be involved in MTK at that point anyway?
Yeah, 2016 he would have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was supposed to have pulled out at some point after February, yeah. So that's most of the year, isn't it?
It is. So when Top Rank promoted Conlan's first professional fight in March 2017, the buff had arranged for MMA star fellow Irishman Conor McGregor to walk Conlan out of his dressing room up to the ring. And when McGregor tried to back out, the buff bragged openly in boxing circles that he had Kinahan lean on the Notorious to force him to honour his commitment. And Keane says he's no ideas if this is true, but this is what he goes around bragging.
Right, okay.
Now, it's an interesting, actually, little moment in the history of MTK Global, because Michael Conlan was one of the first kind of genuine contenders that they signed for world championship belts. And before they had a lot of kind of regional champions, Michael Conlan was a big hope, along with Billy Joe Saunders, who eventually became fought for world championships, and obviously Tyson Fury. And if you remember that night, this was probably one of the first big American events that MTK Global had become involved in. Michael Conlan fought in New York. It was on Paddy's Day. In Madison Square.
Dressed up as a leprechaun or something.
He was dressed well. He was dressed in all green, but it was in Madison Square Garden, which is the home of boxing. I mean, it was a big deal to sell that out. You wouldn't automatically sell that out for a boxing fight. Obviously, the fact it was Paddy's Day. Now, McGregor at the time as well. We think of McGregor as being a big star now, and he's certainly very big, but at that point he had hit the big time himself in the US as a world champion. But also, as far as I remember, there was this beginning of the build-up that he was going to fight Floyd Mayweather, and that's really what pushed him, even further into fame. So all of this was going on, and Michael Conlan.
So what Keane is kind of saying, that the agreement for the Michael Conlan signing from MTK to Top Rank was that McGregor would walk him into the ring in Madison Square Garden, but it was sort of unwritten as such. I'm sure McGregor had no idea that he was part of that agreement or arrangement.
Well, I mean, and McGregor, who knows about that bit? But what we do know is, and I actually looked back on it, because I was Googled the coverage of that night, just to see the pictures and all.
Yeah, and go on.
And when you see in the US news media, it wasn't Michael Conlan. Michael Conlan is relatively unknown to him. Obviously, he was an Olympic boxer and a medal winner, but in that sense. But so all of the coverage was about Conor McGregor walked him in, and that was the top line. Conor McGregor was.
They knew what they were doing,
so they knew what they were doing. Yes, to get McGregor to walk him in was a big deal.
Right,
that was the focus of the media attention. So there is a method to their madness.
Yeah,
and he did walk him in, and it did cause a big fuss. And then Michael Conlan in the aftermath, I think on that night, but certainly in the aftermath, he would be asked about your great friendship with Conor McGregor, and he walked in, and he gave an interview actually at a later point. He says, Conlan says, no, we don't keep in touch as much. No, we were talking for a while, but when McGregor versus Mayweather fight was happening, I said Floyd would win, and I haven't heard much from him since. I don't know if that kind of annoyed him or anything, but I was just being honest. So, it wasn't as if...
but, in another part of the forest, because always when you're talking about Daniel Kinahan's business trajectory through the business, you have to look at where he is criminally as well, because he has these two things going on. And remembering back to 2015, when Kinahan, a guy called Hatchet Kavanagh, was murdered in a bar in Marbella. He was shot dead. And his brother, Paul Kavanagh, was shot dead in Dublin.
Yeah.
Very short period of time between one another. Those funerals were conducted. I think the Kinahans put out a story that Hatchet Kavanagh was killed by the Russians. He had pissed off some, Eastern Europeans or something like this, the usual. But the fact of the matter is that that was an in-house Kinahan murder.
Yeah.
So he had murdered them. But Conor McGregor was at the funeral. He was a personal family friend of the Kavanaghs.
Yeah.
And I recall seeing him at the funeral of Paul Kavanagh, who was the last, actually, I think that family had lost about 4 boys. 4 brothers had all died, not all from shootings, but both Hatchet and Paul had been shot like literally within months of one another.
Yeah, and Hatchet Kavanagh's son, Jamie Kavanagh, who was a very talented boxer.
Yeah.
He would have known Conor McGregor growing up. Jamie Kavanagh was a professional boxer as well, with a good record.
Yeah.
By all accounts, a real decent guy. Absolutely no involvement in that side of things. And he would have been, I think they would have known each other from childhood, McGregor. And I think he keeps in contact with Jamie Kavanagh.
Right.
I've seen them in recent times on social media at times. So he would have known them. But yeah, look, it's a murky world. There's another interesting anecdote. If you remember, you will remember the famous picture of Bob Arum and Daniel Kinahan together. Daniel wearing a tuxedo.
Yes. That was the night. Did he buy a football for 150,000 or something?
Yeah, so it was in Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
They went to a charity event. I can't remember what the charity event was. And there's footage of an auction, a charity auction. And there is a football, I think it was from the Champions League final, that Liverpool won. Okay. As far as I know.
I don't remember that detail.
But it was a football from the Champions League final. And I think Daniel Kinahan bought it for charity for 125,000, was it, or something
well,
like that?
It was a lot of money for a football, I remember, but he was applauded and, he was very much sort of lauded that night as the businessman.
Yeah. So that night, I think, when they posed for that picture, was the first time Bob Arum and Daniel Kinahan had come face to face.
That's right, yeah.
So, I mean, Bob Arum at that stage must have been 89.
Yeah.
Like really very old, to be doing this.
Photograph with him.
But Bob Arum is a legendary figure. He'd managed Muhammad Ali, and he was actually a former district attorney, was he? Or he was a former attorney in the US anyway. But there's a report then from Billy Keane about that meeting.
Right.
And he says, while in Kazakhstan, Kinahan confided in Arum that he was concerned about the Buff's ability to lead the company.
Oh, God.
Now, this is after them being meeting with each other, spending time. Yeah. The Buff saying he wanted to get Daniel Kinahan to take all of Frank Warren's boxers and we'll take all of their business.
And the Buff is, he's president of Top Rank at this stage. So he's going places.
Oh, he's president.
And I suppose you have Bob Arum, who, whatever, let's not be ageist, but he's probably coming to the end of his career at 89.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the Buff's trying to saying he's senile and can't be trusted and keep it from him. But he doesn't seem to have been fully aware of what was going on in these Kinahan negotiations. That's according to Billy Keane anyway. And, he says, so Kinahan is then trying to screw your man over, I suppose.
Yeah.
And he says, when they returned to the United States, Arum confided in Keane and shared concerns about the Buff's competence and potential as the future leader of Top Rank. Arum then instructed Keane to manage the Kinahan relationship. So it's
unreal. Yeah. And it just shows you how manipulative Kinahan is, how convincing he is, how charming he is.
Yeah.
That's all those things he's turned on there.
Yeah.
He has actually gone in and divided blood. Yeah. I know they're a son-in-law.
Yeah.
So DeBuff is married to Bob Arum's daughter. But nonetheless, to actually go in as a stranger and to divide a father and his son-in-law, who he has promoted to president of his company, is quite an extraordinary thing to do over dinner.
100%. 100%. I mean, look, it's a remarkable insight into it all. I mean, what you do see is the world of boxing is which is probably no news to anybody.
Yeah, it's
a shady business, and what Billy Keane is saying is that Frank Warren, of course, we have pictures of meeting with Daniel Kinahan. They work together in whatever capacity. Frank Warren will be, probably the best known boxing promoter in the UK. That he certainly, according to Billy Keane, the Buff, while dealing with Frank Warren, he was also trying to get Kinahan to basically wipe him out, not in any in a business sense.
Yeah.
So amazing stuff, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what is the sort of timeline on this case?
Oh, I don't know, but I know it's he's looking for 25 million basically, Billy Keane, and
from
Top Rank, and also he's suing Todd the Buff as well. But I suppose the money is going to be in Top Rank, you know. So it'll be fascinating when it comes to pass.
Yeah. I think Conlan was dressed as a leprechaun.
Was he? Right. Yeah. But yeah, it was a big night for MTK.
McGregor looks so much younger.
Yes, he does.
It's 8 years ago, I suppose.
It's 8 years. And of course, the Michael Conlon came under a lot of criticism at the time for signing with Daniel Kinahan. Because Michael Conlan was, you know, a genuine Irish hero. And like him and Paddy Barnes.
His brother Jamie Conlan ended up in a senior role in MTK in Dubai as one of these titles, president or whatever. It's a real American thing to be called a president, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of a company. But yeah, he was that. And of course, their own father, whose name escapes me, ended up as, you know, on the Irish Amateur Boxing Board or Association, didn't he, along with Paddy Barnes?
Exactly. So Michael Conlon was.
What's happening with the Conlons now? Do you know?
Well, he's
with that.
Yeah, but I mean, in the aftermath of the sanctions coming down, he released a statement sort of saying that Michael has no links to MTK Global. Him and Jamie set up their own independent management and promotion company, Conlan Boxing, in July 2021. And Michael is managed by Jamie through this, Jamie being his brother.
Yeah.
Now he was mentioned on some of, he was mentioned on some of the sort of the legal documents in relation to MTK. One of the companies that was sanctioned by the US was Hoppo Sports. Hoppo Sports, sorry. And Michael hadn't heard, he released a statement saying, even though his name was associated, Michael hadn't heard of Hoppo Sports until yesterday and there's no connection with them. And he wasn't aware he was on the MTK website or the Hoppo Sports website until yesterday, and is taking necessary steps to get himself removed. So, I mean, he obviously was. See, if you look back to it, it was controversial at the time when he signed up. Michael Conlon was, you know, they had a big thing going on. What was it? Fair.
Oh, it was the media thing, was it?
It was the media. Yes, it was the media thing, and
it was a ban on media.
Yeah,
what's it called?
I can't remember. Fair trade or fair something.
No.
So basically what happened was that a lot of these boxers signed up for obvious reasons. And then while they wouldn't necessarily, you know, there was a lot of shade thrown on any allegations in relation to Daniel Kinahan, they'd had a kind of a line where, and in fairness, they don't have to know everything about the history of the Kinahans, maybe, but...
Well, the line was that he'd no involvement, was it? Or
he's no convictions, you know, we don't know anything about that.
And he wasn't involved in MTK at that stage, 2017 you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, he was in the shadow. Sandra Vaughan had stepped in as the CEO of it, and she came out and banned the media.
Yeah, and of course, Paddy Barnes would have spoken very publicly about how, you know, as far as he's concerned, Daniel Kinahan was a very nice guy.
So he was in his corner.
Yeah, and look, you know, so all of that was going on. Yeah. And I think some of those boxers, Michael Conlon, maybe one of them who felt very aggrieved that this constant connection was being brought up about Daniel Kinahan's criminal links and felt it was unfair on them.
Yeah, the Conlons definitely tried to very much disassociate themselves. And there was some suggestion at one point that they were making a documentary and doing a sort of a fly on the wall style thing that didn't seem to ever come to fruition because of the sanctions. There was a lot of things probably, I'm sure from a business point of view, if you were linked to somebody that was sanctioned, it would be a little bit chaotic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be.
To try and untangle yourself from it. But so, yeah, well, look, I mean, there's going to be more in this. I mean, this is I was actually looking at the picture that we've used of Billy Keane. Is he particularly tiny?
I don't know. Well, it's with Tyson Fury, who's particularly untiny.
Yeah,
I suppose you might say.
I'd actually love to get a photograph beside Tyson.
Would you? Right.
I'd be very tall compared. You know, I'd say.
You might like to get a picture with him, but he might not like to get a picture with you, Nicola.
He might. Anyway, right. We'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Nicola. Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
A Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.